Hi, friends. Let's talk a little bit about the mind body effect, what is now known as psychosomatics, right? So, in Greek, psycho means the mind or the soul, and somatics comes from soma or the body, right? Let's talk about that effect a little bit. So, the mind body effect is not a new idea. This is the idea that the body affects the mind and the mind affects the body. There's a long and rich tradition in philosophy addressing this duality or this interaction between mind and body. We go back to Parmenides, we go back to Aristotle. Anyway, some 2,500 years ago, Greek philosophers were already questioning what could the relationship between mind and body be. More recently, in the 16th century, René Descartes, the famous mathematician, was also a philosopher, addressed this notion of duality. Later, Spinoza, Benedicto Spinoza, talked about this, and Spinoza is famous for the notion of monism. There's only one thing, and body is nothing more than an extension of mind in some way. So one interacts with the other. And on and on and on, the debate goes on. Now, more modernly, we have this idea okay, we know that if my body hurts, I may be upset, right? If I have pain, somebody stepped on my toe and it hurts like crazy, so I get upset. Oh, man, be more careful next time. Please don't step on my toe, right? So my emotions have changed, my behavior has changed because my toe is in pain. So the notion that the body affects the mind or the emotions is kind of understood. We assume that to be obvious. In other words, if I'm feeling a lot of pleasure in my body, I feel good. If I'm feeling pain in my body, I feel horrible. That idea is kind of obvious. The question is, what about in reverse? Can the mind affect the body? And most people would say, yeah. But then, usually the question centers around the notion of healing chronic illnesses. Can I will my way into healing? In other words, if a person has a major illness such as cancer, cardiovascular disease, will a changing the mind be enough to create a cure on the body? That's usually where this conversation goes. I mean, that is the practical application of the mind body effect. And let's suppose, for sake of this conversation, we'll get to this in a moment, but let's suppose that we accept that it is possible to change the body by virtue of changing the mind. Now, before I even get there, let's realize that intuitively we acknowledge that possibility when, for instance, I decide to go to the gym and lift weights. 1 year later, I go to the gym every day and I lift progressively heavier weights because I made a mental decision. 1 year later, my arm is huge or much bigger, and you say, wow, your mental decision to go to the gym and lift weights resulted in a change in your body. So, that kind of mind body effect through behaviors is already acknowledged. That's obvious. If the person decides to smoke and gets lung cancer, say there's a mental origin to the illness through the behavior of smoking. We acknowledge that, but that's not what we're talking about. What we're asking is, okay, this particular patient has cancer. Can, can some type of mental process by itself result in remission of the cancer? No chemotherapy, no surgery. And again, I'm not suggesting this. I'm not suggesting that we forego medical therapy. I'm asking a philosophical question. Will a changing the mind alone, in of itself, produce any degree of healing, or in this example, remission of the tumor? That's the question that we're asking. And suppose you say to me, yes, it is possible. There is quite a bit of evidence that that is possible, by the way. But the natural extension to that question then becomes, how did the tumor come about to begin with? And by the very logic that it's possible for the mind to do away with the tumor, the natural extension is, well, then my mind must have had something to do with the creation of the tumor in the first place. And that's where things get really hairy and people become really defensive. Most people refer to illnesses as something that happens to them, not something that they created. So it's odd because people would come to me. Remember, I started hypnotherapy 25 years ago. I used to work at university. My doctorate was in biomedical engineering, working on cardiovascular diseases and degenerative diseases. And I wanted to do hypnotherapy because I wanted to help people change their minds in order to change their bodies. And when a person would come over, oh yeah, I love that idea, I love this, whatever. So first conversation would be about, okay, why did you even need this illness to begin with, or some type of conversation like that. And whoa, this is getting too heavy. I don't need this. I don't want this. I didn't create this. Well, if a change in your mind is capable of eliminating a problem in your health, it stands to reason that we must have had something to do with the illness. And then people say, no, that's not true. It's because of my genes. It's because of the virus. It's because of this, because of that. Anything but responsibility for the illness. And what I found over the years, and what other investigators have found, is that unless we're willing to take responsibility for the illness, we lose our power when it comes to eliminating the illness. And you say to me, well, illness, I don't have cancer, I don't have heart disease. Some people I worked with are in that category, and their illness is something called obesity, for instance. They have a ton of excess weight, and they'll tell me things like, well, my metabolism is slow, or I have thick bones. Yeah, but you're 100 pounds overweight, and your bones are this, whatever. The denial is incredible, And I don't have any criticism toward that. I'm simply explaining that our power to change the situation comes from owning the creation of the problem. Because if I created this problem, I can undo it. I can create a solution as well. So whether your challenge is a physical diagnosis, a physical illness, or something like obesity or excess weight, whatever your challenge is, your health challenge is, I encourage you to ask yourself one question. And the question is, what purpose does this serve me? So it's a very difficult question to ask. At the office, for instance, as soon as I would lay that question on the person, they would say, you're crazy, this serves no purpose, it's ruining my life, it's ruining my marriage, whatever the case is, right? And I would say, well, okay, we have to talk a lot about this until we're ready for the question. The question that I thought was obvious to everybody turned out to be a really powerful and difficult question to tackle. And many people couldn't handle that question until many, many sessions into the program. And the question is, what purpose does it serve? Your natural reaction, if you are facing some type of dysfunction in your body, and you ask yourself that question, your natural reaction is going to be to snap and say, none, I hate this, I want it to go away. And I encourage you to get past that and give the question a chance. Okay, suppose there is a purpose for this. What would that purpose be? I remember talking to one guy who said, I was very, he didn't use the word arrogant. He used the word inhuman, but he meant it in a arrogant way. I'm better than you type of thing. Then he got cancer, had a number of surgeries, survived for many years against all medical odds. And as he was healing and as he survived, he would say, I needed that experience to become more human. And we talked a whole lot about this. And what he meant by human versus non-human was his way of saying, I was a bit arrogant. I thought I was better than everybody else. God knows I've had my share of problems, and I can tell you openly and honestly that it made me a much better person. And when I tell you that the problems made me a better person, it sounds so sadistic. It sounds terrible. I know. It does sound terrible as I say it. But when I look at the man I was and the man that I am, I don't know what other way I could have gone from the point A to point B in only a few years if it weren't for the problems that I had. So in some ways, I'm grateful for what happened. But at the time, it was extremely difficult to the point where I thought my life was over. It was really difficult. But then again, the transformation was absolutely wonderful. So I don't know how else we could have done this. If our life itself, would I have done it differently? If I were, I don't know. So somehow my unconscious created all of these problems in order to transform my life, because above all else, I wanted the transformation, and this was the path that my transformation took. So my question to you is, whatever problem you're facing right now, what purpose is it serving? What type of transformation are you consciously or unconsciously hoping to achieve? Because here's my point. If you accept that the illness has a purpose, and if you're able to identify what the purpose is, if I can show you how to achieve your purpose, the illness no longer serves you, and that's how you heal. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should drop your physician. I think we should partner up with your physician. I'm not suggesting dropping medical care. I've had surgeries, I take medication. I'm not suggesting to be, I'm not anti-establishment. I went to medical school. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that oftentimes a person has a chronic condition that, despite the best medical care in the world, doesn't seem to go away. That's what I'm talking about. So then we need another kind of help, another kind of change in order to make the problem go away, right? I mean, if I have a medical problem and I take one pill and the problem disappears forever, we're done with that conversation. That's easy. The problem is that some illnesses or some dysfunctions don't go away despite the best care in the world. Those are the cases I'm talking about. And we can start to fix that. We can start to solve the problem by asking ourselves the following question. What purpose is this serving me? The pain, the dysfunction, the aggravation, what purpose is it serving? What message is it bringing me? If you give yourself a chance and you find an answer to that question, the next step is, okay, if that's my purpose. So to give you the example of this one person I worked with, okay, he said that the illness, in his case, he had cancer. Your case is different, or whatever your case is. He said that the illness made him more human, right? Suppose he's going through that, because I met him on the tail end of that experience after his surgery. But he had already had surgery when I met him. He was in the recovery phase. But suppose that the person is facing a diagnosis right now. The diagnosis could be obesity, or it could be erectile dysfunction, or it could be, some type of, and you say, yeah, I take medication, it's not getting better. Excess weight is a big one. It's a big, huge one, because it's a chronic condition for most people. It seems so simple, and we don't think of it as a medical problem, but it is. It's a huge medical problem. It is implicated in diabetes, heart disease, blindness, neuropathy. I mean, all kinds of problems are related to obesity. So, and it is a chronic condition, a very serious one, but because it's a slowly progressing condition, we don't think of it as an illness, but it is. So going back to this idea, let's suppose that a person tells me I'm arrogant, the illness made me more humble, and my purpose is to be more humble, so I needed the illness to become more humble. Let's suppose that that's the case. Well, if I'm able to identify that, and if we can find a way to become more humble without having to go through the illness, if we are already ill, we can heal it really fast. That's the mind-body effect at work right there. This is one angle of the mind-body effect. And the suggestion here is that you ask yourself very seriously the question, what purpose is this dysfunction or illness serving me? Let's identify that purpose, and let's find a healthier way to achieve your purpose in such a way that the illness is no longer needed, therefore it can go away. We call that healing. Okay, that's how we do these things. That's how we employ the mind-body effect to help people improve their health. Now, I can help you do this, and there's no cost or anything. Just there's a link below this video. Click on the link. It's going to take to a whole series of, you're going to love this. I'm not going to waste your time now describing this, but if this is what you're interested in, all you have to do is click on the link below, and I'll take over from there, and I'll show you how to do all of this. absolutely my gift to you. So I'm eager to meet you and to know what you're going through. So let's go through that together. Blessings to all of you.